And some of you need to take those risks and take the steps. You can pray for courage and you can cry out for courage, but until you actually do something about it, you will continue to pray the same prayer over and over until you begin to put yourself in situations where it requires risk, where it requires something of you. God will just keep you in the same place. You have to move. You have to go forward. You have to begin to position yourself. I used to lay in bed and I would, as just a little guy, like it's easy to have these big stories and, you can listen to them, but how does it apply to you, And I was just another kid. I was just another conference guy. And I would lay in bed. When Randy first asked me to come along, 5 days after I moved out to Pennsylvania to start traveling with Randy, I saw Heidi. And I was praying just like any of you guys were or would, and I was just saying, God, if she would pray for me, if she would just come and pray for me, God, it would change me, it would wreck me forever. And I remember Heidi preaching. Was in the basement of Life Center. It was downstairs before they built their big auditorium in Pennsylvania. And I'm there in the crowd, and I just remember Heidi just coming off the stage and going over bodies, and she drops down in front of me, and I just melt, and she like cradles me in her arm like this slain lamb. And for like the next half hour, 40 minutes, she prayed over me. I was supposed to be managing the Global Awakening bookstore. It was back in the day. I was only an intern for 5 days at that point, so there's some grace on it. But I prayed. I said, God, I literally left that meeting going, God, I want to leave Randy. I mean, I didn't. I stayed with him for the next 9 years. But I said, God, I want to go and I want to serve. I want to serve. I want to see. I want to encounter this. See, when you watch stuff like that video, it's like what Bill was saying. There's a testimony. There's an opening there for you to go, oh, am I going to go, oh, that's nice. Or I hope someday, or are you going to begin to do something? Are you going to begin to dream with God over your life? Or are you just going to sit there and live your life vicariously through the ministers that are around you? Or are you just going to get excited at everybody else's testimony? Or are you going to believe God to do something over your life? And so there's a combination of believing God, getting encouraged, crying out for hunger, and crying out for breakthrough, and crying out for courage. But then there's a step that you have to take that's married with that. And so for me, I would lay in bed and I would literally put numbers up. I had a bottom bunk. Jamie Galloway's an awesome minister. He had the top bunk for a little while. I had the bottom bunk as you're traveling with Randy. And I would put poster boards up above on the bottom bunk, and I would just believe it and say, Lord, I want to see 10,000, 100,000. And I would pray like crazy prayers, like, Lord, I just want to be around Heidi Baker, and Lord, if I could just meet her one day. And I remember I was an intern for about 9 months at that point. And Josh Clark, Randy's oldest son, he came up to me, he says, hey, I want you to do something. Randy wants you to do something. I was like, what? He says, they want you to go lead a trip to Mozambique. I said, I said, really? They said, yeah. They're like, they don't think the other interns can handle it, but we think that you can. I've never said that before, Jamie. I'm sorry. We were all in different places. And they said, do you want to do it? And I was like, yes, please. And they said, this guy named Tom Jones is going on it. I said, okay. I said, great. And so I hopped on a plane with Tom. We met, the first time Tom and I met was in Mozambique. And we spent time in Maputo, and then we flew up north to Pemba, and it was just when Iris had moved up to Pemba, just in northern Mozambique. And I remember landing in the Pemba airport. You come in, and Pemba's this peninsula. It kind of juts out into the ocean. And you land in, and all you saw was just mud huts. And you go, what the heck am I doing? What am I getting into? And we landed in, and it was back in the day. There was really very little infrastructure in Iris. Like everything you saw in that video has been built in the last 10, 11, 12, 13 years, or however long it's been. And we land in, and we go to the original base. They pick us up, they put us in these flatbed trucks. And you don't have to do that anymore. There's buses now. Sometimes you actually get the flatbeds. And I would encourage you to try it at least once in your life. And we come in on these flatbed trucks into Iris, and Heidi's out there like greeting us. And the only encounter I had with her was at that conference where she cradled me in her arms, and it was, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months later. And I remember walking in this group, and I was helping Global, but I didn't have a badge on. I was one of the youngest ones on the team. There was a bunch of pastors and leaders there. And I remember just shorts, t-shirt. I had this brown backpack that I would clip on, and just like, I was so nervous that somebody was going to rob me and stab me. I had all this Global Awakening money, and so I just came in. I was just so nervous in my brown backpack. And we get off the truck, and there's Heidi, and she's like, welcome to Pemba. It's so wonderful to have you here. And she was a ballerina, right? You did ballet, right? I can't believe you're here. Okay, you watch her. She stands like this. It's awesome. She's everything she does is she preaches. It's art, and she goes, well, and she goes and she says hi to everybody. She's going down the line, and I'm just like, oh God, like my wildest dreams are coming true. And she says hi, and she stops and she goes, oh, who are you? I'll never forget it. She goes, who are you? And I was like, my name's Will Hart, And she's like, ooh. She's like, God's on you. Do you remember this? I don't know if you remember this. You don't remember this, do you? Come on, let's be honest. Do you remember this? You go, you're like, what's your name? And I'm like, Will Hart. You're like, God's on you. And I said, really? Yes. Like I started crying, And she's like, I want you to preach at my pastor's conference. And I was like, and I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, tomorrow there's a pastor's conference. And there was all these pastors there. There was all these leaders there. Do you remember this, Heidi? Do you remember this? It was at Glory Base. And I just literally crumbled. I didn't have a message. I didn't have anything like. And I remember going back to my room and just being like, what's happening? Like, I'm preaching on a thing, and Tom Jones, he was just like, he's like, you're going to do fine, boy. You're going to do just fine. And I open up my Bible. I'll never forget, I had this, like, the hardcover Bible, and I open it up. And I'm like, what do I teach on, God? And the conference starts. And when we say conference, it was bush pastors in a old, like, mud hut type church building. It was just raw. There were people sleeping everywhere. And I remember standing up in this mud hut as Heidi goes, it's all yours, Will. And I remember opening up my Bible, and the thing that the Lord told me to teach on was on authority, spiritual authority. Number one, I'd never preached a message on spiritual authority. I didn't have one. And I remember standing up and sitting on the floor in front of me. 5 feet in front of me was Heidi Baker. Next to her was Roland Baker. Next to him was Surpresa Sitole, who'd raised X amount of people from the dead, like 6 people from the dead at that point. Sitting next to them was Don Wecky, and Pai Don Wecky and Mai Don Wecky, who she raises babies from the dead, and they're like leaders in the province. And they're like this pimply-faced, 20-year-old kid who's going to teach the leaders of one of the greatest revivals on the planet about spiritual authority. Listen up, guys. I have something to teach you. I've never been more nervous in my whole life. And I remember I preached with 2 translators for like 7 minutes. The whole thing. I got up there and I just went, Jesus loves you, you're supposed to have authority, all authority is given by God, go. And then we prayed and the power of God fell. And I was captivated with that place. I just said, I have to run here, I have to serve here. And it wasn't until a few years later that I moved out there with my brand new wife and we encountered God. Here's what I'm saying. Listen to me, guys. There's a step that you have to take. And there are things that you've been praying for in the quiet. There are things that you've been praying for in the secret. And God is waiting for you to actually go and do something so He can call you out. He's not going to call you out where you're at. He's not going to call you out where you're at. Some of you need to learn how to dream big with God. You believe that God won't take you. You believe that God doesn't want you. You believe that God can't call you. Listen, I was just a kid, a missionary kid in Paraguay. Nobody knew me. Nobody cared. I would pray the biggest prayers I could possibly dream. I would say, God, just bring the people to me, Lord. Whoever it is, let me be with them. Whoever it is, God, wherever you want me to be, here I am. Take me, choose me, use me. I'll go anywhere. I'll do anything. And I meant it. I meant it in my heart. I was at the Call Boston. I just flew back in from Paraguay. I was a missionary there for about 1.5 years, 2 years. I flew in, I landed. It was like 5 days later was the Call Boston. And I remember getting on the train and going out to this gathering. And there's about 30,000 people there. And I'm standing amongst the crowd of 30,000 people, just crying out to God. Everybody there was fasting. I wasn't. I had a granola bar or two on me, and I'm just going, wow, Jesus, this is amazing. I've never been to I've never seen anything like this. And Lou Engle gets up on the stage and he begins to pray. And as he's praying, he stops and he goes, God wants fathers to bless sons. And he goes, everybody in here, find someone, even if you're not a father, if you're a mother, find a son, find somebody. And I remember in my heart going, God, my dad's not here, my spiritual father isn't here, but I would love the blessing of a father. I would love for that thing. And I just began, even in the midst of a crowd of 30,000 people, I began to dream big. It was crazy. I had my mom mailed me these pair of Birkenstocks. I'll never forget them. And I had them for like 1.5 years. I traipsed all over Paraguay in these Birkenstocks, and they were awful. I mean, they were god-awful. They were just like nasty, soiled, stinky Birkenstocks. And I remember praying, and I saw Lou Engle stop, and he just goes, I'm going to come and pray for somebody. And he jumps off the stage in a crowd of 30,000 people and beelines towards me. And I remember Lou Engle walking up and grabbing hands as 30,000 people pray, as literally the Lord brought him to me. Never mind. I don't know. I don't know if this means anything to you. But you have not because you asked not. And some of you guys got to dream with God. Some of you guys got to put numbers over your bed. Some of you guys need to put a remembrance about what He can do and what He wants to do in your life. And some of you need to take those risks and take the steps. You can pray for courage and you can cry out for courage, but until you actually do something about it, you will continue to pray the same prayer over and over until you begin to put yourself in situations where it requires risk, where it requires something of you. God will just keep you in the same place. You have to move. You have to go forward. You have to begin to position yourself.